Hi, this is Dan from Real Mac Software and welcome to this week's Elements Developer Diary. Now this week we're going to take a look at a few things. Firstly, the modal dialog element in RapidWeaver, sometimes called an overlay. And then after that we're going to answer a question that I missed out from last week's video. So let's hop over to Elements. Now I've got this website set up and I already have a modal dialog set up in this button here. So the modal element is here. You can just drag this onto your page. I've already got one in there. And I can click here and that will select it. Let me go to the layout manager and show you how this is set up. So this is my modal element here and it's sitting in the page in these flex items. And we have two drop zone areas. One, we have the trigger, and the other, we have the content. So I've got trigger and content, and the trigger is what we click to make the modal appear, and the content is the content of the modal. So let's hop over to preview. And if I click on our button here, it shows this very basic little pop-up that appears there. So let's go back to edit mode, and we can take a look at this. So for our trigger, we can put anything in here. So if I go over here, I could add some text. Let's just drop that in there. And let's go back here. So I could have some text. So now if I drop this, so in the drop zone area for the trigger, we've got both of these items, text and a button. So that means if I click on either of these things, it's going to launch that modal, which is pretty cool. I obviously don't want, we only want the button, but you could put anything in here you like. You could put an image, whatever, but let's stick with a button. So that looks good. And we can style this the way we usually style a button. So we have all the usual controls because it's just a standard element. And then the content we drop in here, but we need a way to edit this content in edit mode. So we've got this little switch up here, which will display the modal in edit mode so that we can see what we're doing. So with this, I think we need to style this a little bit. So these are the options for the modal dialog at the moment. We can set the placement, and I'll come back to this in a minute. We can set the background opacity and color. You know, we can pick from our built-in colors there. We can set the opacity there and the blur. So you can see here we've got that frosted glass look again, which I don't think is right for this dialog. So we'll stick with 100% opacity. We want a shadow. Let's go for an extra large shadow on there. Now the shadows is very subtle there, so we could go and edit that in the theme studio, or we can just edit it here. So let's pick a black. There we are, and that's looking a little bit. We can kind of see that now. There. So that's got our shadow on there, and we want to round the corners on this. I think that would be better. Let's just put those to 3XL, which is, that's quite a curvy dialog, but that's all right. 3XL. So that's looking a little bit nicer now. Now, let me go and select that again. We can adjust the position of this. So we can position it at the top, and there it's butted up against the top of the window. But luckily we've got this little offset here, so I can bring that down a bit if I wanted, or we could place it at the bottom. Let's go over to preview, and now if I click that, it slides down. And if I place it at the bottom and we go and preview that, click, it slides up. So it's very clever. It just works, which is real nice. Now we can drop anything in here. So we could make this a panel. And now if we preview, it slides in at the side. Now this is pretty cool because this will be very flexible. So I could put navigation in here, and I'm not going to demo it this week, but it's something Ben's been working on. We've got a tree navigation. So if I wanted full customization on my navigation, I wanted to show lots of levels, you could use the trees, and the tree element, and this is going to be very good for kind of content-rich sites, like if you're building some documentation, you know, you've got a site with a lot of pages, this will be great. And I'll probably show that off next week, because there's a little bit more to do to that, so I don't want to show it off just yet. So yeah, so this is pretty cool that we can set where we want this modal to go. I am going to put it back into the center because that's what I want. And I was putting this together because I want a sign up form here. Now I've got some code I prepared earlier. Now I use Button Down as our email service, so our newsletter email service. So, and this is the code it gave me, and which is fine, but it's unstyled and it's kind of raw HTML. It's a raw form there. So what I've done, I've added some Tailwind classes which Elements uses. I've added some classes to here to give it a bit more styling. So I'm going to copy this over, and what we're going to need to do is we're going to need an HTML element because we want to paste this HTML into our page. So I've got an HTML element here, and we'll drop it into our form. We'll drop it into our modal, and I'll paste this code in. And it displays as code, so we don't render it in here yet, because this is just the edit mode. So now if we head on over to preview and we click get notified, we've now got this nice subscription form, and this is styled using Tailwind. So this color is coming from the color for the button is coming from the Theme Studio, which is pretty cool. If we go over to here, we can see, this is our code here, we can see the color for the button is using BG Realmac 500, and the overlay is BG Realmac 700 for the hover. And if I open up our Theme Studio, you can see we've got the Realmac color there, and the shades here are numbered from 50 to 900 there. And this is pretty standard Tailwind stuff. So the standard button was 500 and the rollover was 700. So I can use any of these colors in this form. We'll edit it in here because it's a bit easier to see. So I could change this to a lighter rollover. So we could go, for 300, or we could swap it to a yellow color when we roll over. So let's do yellow 300. So in here, I'm going to write yellow 300, and that's referencing this color. So let's copy our form again and paste it in here. And while I was here, I also, I think the curve on here is too big, so I'm going to change it to 2XL. I don't know why that 3XL is just bugging me. So I've changed that, and let's go over and preview our form. So now there it is again, and when I roll over, we're using that yellow color. So it's very powerful stuff, this. And this is, you can see this is one reason why, rather than using a single color, we've got these gradients, because it's really handy to pick the main color for an object and then have these other shades that you can use for rollovers and highlights and things like that. So there we go. So we've set up our form, or we've set up our modal dialog, really easy to set up, and we've used some HTML in the page, just copy and pasted it, and it all just works. So yeah, so that is modal dialogues. There's a few other options in here to tweak, and we're still messing around with it. You know, we could, I can make the background blur when we roll over, or we can darken it. So we could do that and give it a real good blur. So now let's go and preview that. I hit get notified, and we get this nice overlay effect. So super. Good. All right. Well, that is the that's how the modal works, or the overlays. So really powerful stuff and really flexible. And next week I'll probably will demo the tree element in a slide out panel. So yeah, so do check back next week on next week's video for that. Right now, let's just turn that off. Now I had a question to answer from last week. Now I missed this out because it had been asked after we had done the video. But I've got this question from Heroic Nonsense, or Erwin, as he probably likes to be called. So he said, you've shown that Element stores images once. That's correct. So anything we add in here only gets exported once. So it's very, very efficient, and it works just the way you'd want it to. So it keeps the names, keeps the folder structure, everything, and it only exports it once, which is great, which is exactly what you want. So is the same true for files? Well, yes, if you drop files in here, anything dropped into the resources area will only be exported once. So RapidWeaver was very smart like that. And so he goes on to say, for instance, are JS and CSS files only stored once as well, or still on a per page basis like in RapidWeaver Classic? So RapidWeaver Classic, when you export a site with multiple pages, it exports each page into a separate folder and then creates a files folder and stores CSS in there for each page. So there is some duplication going on. So I think that's what you're referring to, Erwin. And with Elements, we want to make it as efficient and streamlined as possible. So we've got a little bit more work to do and a little bit more optimization, but that is the plan, to get the CSS files used for these pages to only be exported once. So I can't demo that just yet, but that is something that is on the to-do list and something we've talked about. So we're aiming to make sure that it's better than Classic. So for the stuff we export, for the Tailwind things, that is the goal, to have that just exported once. So now he goes on to say, also, can you show a bit of the way code insertion works in Elements? So one would enter code that goes in the body or head, and where CSS is entered. So I've showed, because I think he goes on to say how, is there a way to manually enter HTML code somewhere within the page like you would using HTML in a stack in Classic? So yes, I've just showed that part off, that you can just paste in HTML into a HTML element. Yes, you can include custom code on a project wide and a per page basis. So we've got the per page HTML here. This needs to be reworked. We've got some plans for this, and we have site-wide code as well with all the usual areas. So that will all just work. So you can use custom CSS, includes whatever you want on a per page or per site basis. So I hope that answers all your questions there, Erwin. If you've got any more questions about that, or if I didn't cover something properly, do just reply in this thread, or in this thread here, or on the thread where we've posted this video. Just let me know and I can cover it next week. All right, that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back next week as always with another Elements update. All right, thanks a lot for watching and happy weaving. Cheers, bye.